Hello, everyone. Welcome back to day number 12 of our Cybersecurity Awareness Month series. And today's topic is a pretty big one. You hear it a lot from us. We're always talking about the dark web. So, what exactly is the dark web? Very simply, the dark web is a bunch of resources and websites and services and such that are not accessible through normal means, meaning that you can't just go onto your browser and get onto a dark website. Now, how exactly does that work if you're accessing things through the internet and accessing things through a browser? Well, there's this thing called an onion, and the onion is the thing by which we browse. So we have these onion pages, which typically don't have very human readable names. So we all know google.com, we know bing.com, microsoft.com. Those are pretty normal names. Uh, Onion sites are typically kind of these hexadecimal G74797 blah 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 dot onion. And that's the dot onion is just telling the browser kind of that this is an onion page. Now, the way that these things are accessed is through something called a Tor network. Now, another one we could thank our government for creating for us. They needed a secure way to, more exactly, they needed an anonymous way to talk back and forth, and that hence the Tor network was born. Now, Tor actually is short for the Onion router. And not to get too geeky, but a router is how you direct people to the right place that they need to go. So, for instance, when you want to watch a Disney movie, you type in disney.com, you log into that site. Well, that site lives somewhere. Now, it lives in many places, but it lives somewhere, and you have to get directed to that content somehow. And that's done through our normal internet providers and their providers and the backbones that you hear about. Kind of all of this routing goes on. Now, Tor routing is a little bit different because the Onion router, what they do is to keep everyone anonymous, is they kind of have an entry point, and then you come out the other end on some sort of exit point. And they really don't have knowledge of each other other than kind of where things go in the middle, as opposed to normal internet traffic, where we can kind of trace back. Literally, that's kind of a tool that we have. It's called Trace Route, where we can trace how we're actually getting to the destination Disney.com. Whereas the Tor, we really can't. That's the whole purpose of it, is to hide and keep things anonymous. So that's kind of how it works in a nutshell. I've grossly simplified things so that we can keep it in our allotted time, because we could literally talk a whole day on how Tor and everything comes about. So what about this dark web? So, in the beginning, I'd said that it's just stuff that's just not normally accessible. Now, once you get onto a Tor browser, it's not like you hop onto your Tor search engine and get this information either. Now, don't get me wrong, there are kind of these wikis that have links, and there are also kind of some dark web search engines, if you will, but they are very limited in scope as to what they kind of bring back. And because they are kind of accessible and not so private, they probably have to be very careful as to what they are actually indexing and where they go, so as not to actually implicate themselves in any of the kind of nasty business that goes on in the dark web. Now, how exactly do you find resources out there, you ask, if there's no search engine? I mean, think about trying to access the normal internet these days with no search engine. There's no Google, no Bing, no DuckDuckGo, none of that. None of it exists. How would you actually get to things? And you're going to have to guess. You're going to have to go after company names or something like that, or just pick up the phone and ask them what their website is, I guess. So, you have a search engine, but in dark web, they don't. So how exactly does that work? Well, like I said, there are some partial search engines, but it's really about getting into kind of like the old school bulletin board systems, if you will, some forums, also not published. So you need to kind of work your way in to gain trust in order to get links to the resources that are used. Now, a lot of this stuff is freely available on like Wiki and stuff, and those are like your typical drug purchasing sites and stuff like that. But some of the more harder core, the things that the kind of the things that the governments are kind of getting together now to try to extinguish, stuff like child trafficking rings and stuff like that. They can stay very anonymous inside of this ecosystem unless someone rats out one of their addresses or something like that. And, that might be something to go on, but it's not a whole heck of a lot, seeing that this whole anonymous bridge occurs between the entry point of where you connect to a Tor network to the exit point that actually gets to the resource that you need. The whole part in the middle is pretty anonymous. So I hope that you're starting to see kind of how difficult it would be to find resources, even for kind of law enforcement to find resources on the kind of on this Tor network, and then how difficult it is to kind of keep up with that, because things change constantly out there. Let's say that one of these rings do find out that someone has given up something, they can change their address and communicate that within their circles very effectively, very quickly. And then the hunt is on again to find that needle in the haystack. So that's kind of how the dark web operates. And it's kind of a bit scary. It is. And, you would think, how did this thing come about? And again, it's thanks to our military kind of developing this system, and then it went public and rogue on us, but kind of shares a little bit of the difficulty you would have in enforcing that type of situation. Whereas in the plain internet, to have, for instance, www.google.com, you have to own that IP address, and by the registration methodologies, you kind of have to prove who you are to a certain extent. Now, that doesn't kind of prevent people from buying domains that are like other domains and doing bad things. It just means that there's a lot more things that people can use, such as law enforcement can use, to go after people who do things on the internet, where it's all kind of traceable, as opposed to the dark web, which by its nature, being on a Tor network, is not. So I hope this helped shed a little bit of light on the dark web. Didn't even notice what I did there to just now, but I hope it did. And we're going to touch that a little bit on our webinar series. We're not going to go too far into the weeds on that, other than kind of showing what's out there, just kind of scraping the surface and just showing what a couple of screenshots look like from the dark web. That'll be part of our presentation. But do sign up for that. There's so much more other content. I'm going to put in the link below. And then, of course, we have 2 more webinars coming up in the following week. So I'll look forward to those, especially the live hacking demo. And that one, you would actually see the dark web in action to a certain extent if we were bad guys and we actually were going to give you a place to pay your ransom. Because guess what? You have to pay a ransom on the dark web. They're not going to do it through normal internet. They don't want to get caught. So all of the ransom stuff is usually handled through the dark web. Just a quick note on that one. All right. Well, until next time, stay safe, stay online, and have an awesome day. So long.